What's up, guys? Welcome back to today's episode of the Sports Sermon. We are brought to you by Scooch, the most functional phone case on the market. Check out scoochcase.com to get yours today and use the code SPORTS18, sports with a Z, of course, to get a 10% discount on your order. Stay tuned till the end for a special Scooch giveaway as well. But now, today's episode.
And welcome inside the Sports Sermon. I am Dylan Staggy here today with Jason Gandhi and Dan Majors. And as you can tell by the title, today we are talking about fantasy football wide receivers. So we're going to talk about some specific wide receivers and then get into a little bit of draft strategy at the end and give our top 10 rankings for the wide receiver position. But let's get into it. First question today. The big debate on Julio Jones is the touchdowns. What do you guys think about that? What is his value? Do the touchdowns make a big difference for you? He only had 3 a season ago.
I mean, I understand the touchdown issues, but even with that, you know what you're getting and maybe more. Let's say he doesn't get a lot of touchdowns. You know he's going to rack up the yardage and will still be a wide receiver 1. That's his floor. But if he does figure out the touchdown issue, then he could be up there with Antonio Brown as a top fantasy wide receiver.
Yeah, I love Julio Jones. I don't think that people need to worry about him as much as the conversation is being talked about. You look at his last 3 years besides this one, it was 6 touchdowns, 8 touchdowns, 6 touchdowns. He was tied for 7th in red zone targets last season. He was 3rd in targets inside the 10-yard line. If that stays the same, you can expect an additional 5 to 7 touchdowns. And think about last year. He had 2 to 3 huge drops that were easy touchdowns late in the season. Even that puts him at 6, which is perfectly fine, and we aren't talking about this. He had 1,444 yards last season. He is perfectly fine, and it could be the number 1 receiver in fantasy football.
Yeah, I mean, he's so good that he's still a solid wide receiver without the touchdowns. I think they'll definitely just go up at least a little, and he's just going to be perfectly fine this season. But let's move on to Amari Cooper. What do you guys think is up with him after his rough season last year? And how do you rank him?
So, he was targeted 96 times, and he only caught 48. It was a horrendous season for him. He was outside a top 25 receiver, and he was drafted as a top 15. For this year, I still like him. He's only 24, he had multiple 1,000-yard seasons, and he's in a new system with Gruden. Crab is gone. Coop is the number 1 receiver in Oakland, and I expect him to get 100-plus targets. I will still be drafting him, but he's far from safe.
If he doesn't figure it out, then he'll sit at where he did last year, which was close to 700 yards and 7 touchdowns. But let's say he does figure it out, then he could end up being a top 10 wide receiver. He's that talented, but I don't really know. So I will fill up my starting lineup before I take him. I could definitely take him as a flex, but other than that, no.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to rank him because of that season a year ago. He definitely had a dip in his targets, though, and John Gruden has said that he wants Amari Cooper to be the focal point of the Raiders' offense. So I'm going to write off last year as a fluke year for now. I really like Cooper. He had 2 solid seasons before last year, so I think you also have to look at those. Cooper has plenty of potential, and I think all things are looking up for him right now.
I don't know. I mean, I love him, and so, that's awesome, but I am worried about him personally. I am pretty worried, but I like him. Maybe it's just because I'm biased and I'm a Raider fan, so I'm like, hey, I'll take him. But I don't know. I don't think he's safe, so I don't want you guys to think we all love him. Definitely go snag him. I don't think you're crazy if you don't touch him.
Yeah, I mean, definitely a little bit of a risk, but I think it could definitely be worth the reward for your fantasy team. Let's talk about another wide receiver, one that has had some issues in the past, and Josh Gordon off the field. But how do you value him this season, and do you take those into account at all?
I don't worry about it. I like the Browns' offense from a fantasy perspective. I have him ranked right around wide receiver 18, and he's going number 20 right now on ESPN. I think he's fine where he is. Everything seems to be pointing up for Gordon, so I'm not worrying about it. But I also wouldn't be surprised if I'm burned on that comment 2 months from now.
Yeah, I'm not taking him as a top 10 receiver, but I like him in the 15 to 20 spot. He has the upside of a top 10 receiver, but you never know with Josh Gordon.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know about the off-the-field issues, I'm going to say that we can put those behind us for now. He seems to be on the right track, but I'm not huge on him on the field anyway, though, because the Browns have 3 solid running backs, and Tyrod Taylor is not accurate and doesn't even throw a lot of deep balls down the field. He's accurate short, but on the deep balls, he's not great. But deep balls are Josh Gordon's greatest asset, so I think it's not a great fit for the Browns' offense in terms of what his skill set is. It would make sense, though, for me to take Josh Gordon if you already have a wide receiver, but if you're taking running backs with your first 2 picks and Josh Gordon staring you down in the 3rd round, I think I would not take him because you can get somebody else for a wide receiver 1 that's probably more consistent. But
I don't think anybody's looking at him as a wide receiver 1. If you're looking at a wide receiver 1, do not draft him.
No, I'm talking about if you draft 2 running backs with your first 2 picks.
Don't. I mean, like, you can if you want, but like I still
that's
wouldn't
a viable strategy. Like if you get
Not
2
really.
good running backs with good value for your first 2 picks, you shouldn't
running backs
just
score more than receivers.
I'm just saying, do not take Josh Gordon as your number 1 receiver. I don't think that's smart at all. Even if you go 2 running backs, there are better options for your number 1 receiver. He should not be your number 1 receiver.
All right, let's talk about some fantasy wide receiver strategy. Do you guys have any specific strategy on your wide receivers? Draft them early because there's a lot of stars up there, or try to wait and find value later if you think this wide receiver class is really deep?
I never get Antonio Brown because I want one of the top 5 running backs, and if I'm picking there, he's not there. Besides that, I love Julio Jones, and I love DeAndre Hopkins this year. I said it in the running backs, and I'll say it in this one. I think they have both the potential to be number 1 receivers in fantasy at the end of the season. I definitely try to get a high-end wide receiver because there's a clear gap between the elite receiver and a replacement level wide receiver.
Yeah, the only receiver I'll take in the top 4 is Antonio Brown, but after that,
You take him in the top 4
I consider it.
over
David Johnson, maybe not.
and Gurley or and Zeke.
If I had the 4th pick, I would have
Antonio Brown, Zeke.
No, if it was, let's say, Bell, Gurley, Zeke are gone.
Okay.
I'm at 4. I'm
David
looking at
Johnson,
David Johnson and
Antonio
Antonio Brown.
Saquon Barkley.
No, I'm just looking at David Johnson and Antonio Brown. I'm going to consider taking Antonio Brown. I'd probably go David Johnson, but I'm going to consider it.
But if I'm doing math right, then you'll have the 17th pick, 2nd round. Then that's a perfect spot for an AJ Green. I'd go
I don't
David
think
Johnson.
AJ Green's going to be.
He's ADP 16 or 17. Him and Michael Thomas. That's where, for me, if I'm picking 4, I'm going David Johnson. Like I said in the running back, and I'll say it on this one. The elite running backs, the top 4 that I've talked about, those 4 are worth your number 1 pick in those 4. I would not look at Antonio Brown. That's why I said I don't ever get him. But past that is where I don't think running backs are that valuable. You have to, if you can get one of those 4, I don't look twice, personally.
Just the only one I'm going to think about is Antonio Brown. But then
David Johnson.
Maybe,
Okay.
but probably not.
Say David Johnson goes 2. Are you looking at him over Zeke or
No,
Gurley? Okay,
no.
so it's just David Johnson and just Antonio Brown.
Yeah.
Okay.
But then after that, I don't start considering another until like 7 maybe. There's just a lot of question marks with a lot of these top guys this year.
Yeah, for me, I take the most value on the board in terms of top. I would rather get a running back, one of those top running backs. If not, and you're at the end of the 1st round, you definitely look at DeAndre Hopkins, Odell Beckham, and Julio Jones. One thing about wide receivers, though, you might be able to wait in the draft and snag a wide receiver 2. I'm just looking at these rankings that I'm looking at right now. I mean, Brandon Cooks at 24, Corey Davis at 26, Michael Crabtree at 23. I think those guys could be legit wide receiver 2s, and those are kind of down in the rankings. You might be able to snag a couple running backs before you get down to those guys. But anything else on that?
Not really. I mean, I kind of made it pretty clear. Get a good receiver if you can. I think people undervalue them. I think the wide receivers, it's so easy to tell what the team strategy is with them, where I don't think you're risking much by taking a high-end wide receiver because you can tell what the plan is for these teams. So, for me, I don't worry about wide receivers. I think if you can get them, take them. That's me.
All right, so let's move on. Have a quick discussion on the 0 running back strategy. and taking a lot of wide receivers early. Do you guys like that at all?
I don't. I understand the injury risk of getting a top guy, but wide receivers aren't exempt from injury either. OBJ missed all of last year. AB missed time and more. If you search the top 100 all-time single-season leaders in yards, only 2 receivers come up: Calvin Johnson and Jerry Rice. Everyone else is a running back. If I'm drafting at the top, I always go get the top running back.
Yeah, I would honestly go the total opposite of 0 running back. I'm not sold on Odell as everyone else is. Hopkins had a down year 2 years ago, so I question his consistency. And then Julio and Thomas both have touchdown issues, so I have more question marks with receivers than running backs.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in a standard league, don't even think about doing the 0 running back strategy. If you're in a PPR league and you're at the end of the first round, you can easily snag Odell Beckham and Julio Jones on your squad. 10-team league, that's definitely possible. Go ahead and do it. I mean, those guys are great in a PPR league is obviously going to be a lot different than standard. Running backs are less valuable in PPR. But it only works in certain situations. For most people, just go straight value for me. All right, but let's move on to our top 10 fantasy wide receiver rankings. We're going to go down the list from 10 to 1. We'll start with Jason, who is your 10th wide receiver.
Number 10 for me is a guy I don't feel very confident about. He's a guy that scares me, but it's where it's where the wide receiver ones end. I said this in the running backs. For number 11 is where the high-end wide receiver twos start. But for me, number 10, I have to go with T.Y. Hilton. And he scares the heck out of me this year because his fantasy value is all dependent on Andrew Luck. If Andrew Luck is not playing, we all agree he is not a fantasy wide receiver 1, and he's probably a fringe wide receiver 2. I don't know. When it comes to fantasy, I guess I am willing to bet that Andrew Luck is healthy because T.Y. Hilton's going to be a heck of a receiver if he is, and I think Andrew Luck is healthy enough to make T.Y. Hilton relevant. I think he plays enough games to make him relevant. I worry about Andrew Luck's shoulder, though, because he might not be able to throw it as deep as he could, and T.Y. Hilton is a speedster. He's not an elite route runner. He doesn't have elite hands. He makes his money because he can beat cornerbacks deep. I worry about him as my number 10, but he is my last of my wide receiver 1s, assuming Andrew Luck's healthy.
Yeah, I don't have T.Y. Hilton in my top 10.
Because of Andrew Luck?
Yep.
Yep.
So I have Keenan Allen at number 10. He's basically all the Chargers have at receiver except for a breakout season for Mike Williams. But look for Keenan Allen to have about the same year as last year if healthy.
See, I went way back and forth on this number 10 between a lot of guys, but I'm going to go with Stephon Diggs at number 10. I still think he has superstar potential. He just has to put together a full season, being 1, consistent, and 2, without injury. But I think this guy has enough talent to be the number 10 fantasy wide receiver.
Yeah, that's interesting to me that you say him at number 10. I want to hear the rest of your rankings to see who you left out because I think that's very interesting to see moving forward. For me, number 9 is Mike Evans. I think Mike Evans could have a heck of a season if Jameis Winston plays for most of the year. I really like Mike Evans. He's just one of those guys I love. We talk about all the time. He was on that Johnny Manziel Texas A&M team, so I've always had a soft spot for Mike Evans.
I like Doug Baldwin at number 9. He should get a lot more looks with Graham and Kearse gone. He also finished the season a lot better than he started last year, and so I like that leading into this year.
Yeah, see, I did have Baldwin at number 10 before I changed it to Diggs. I took him out, though, because of the injury, which he's going to miss, I think, all of the preseason. And so.
You say you took Doug Baldwin out of your top 10 because of the injury?
Yeah.
Why do you care about preseason for Doug Baldwin?
Well, I mean, I don't like a guy who's injured coming into the season and could be nagging all season. I mean,
I have Doug Baldwin as number 7. I love Doug Baldwin. I think he is. Look at how he's finished the last few years. Tell me what he's. Yeah,
I agree.
The dude. I mean, Dan, you love Russell Wilson. If you love Russell Wilson, you gotta love Doug Baldwin. Those two. Yes, you love Russell Wilson. Don't mouth me that you love Russell Wilson. You had him as your number 2 fantasy quarterback.
Did I?
Yes, after Aaron Rodgers. But
no, I did not.
Yes.
I definitely had Tom Brady number 2.
No, you didn't. Go look at it.
I will.
Do it right now. I want you to look at this.
Okay.
Is Rodgers 1, Russell 2?
Anyway.
Nope. We have to wait.
No, we're not waiting. I have.
Okay, I'm not going until Dan answers.
All right,
okay.
Fine. But I have T.Y. Hilton at my number 9 wide receiver. I like what he can do with Andrew Luck. My only thing about T.Y. Hilton is that because he is so reliant on the deep ball, I don't think he's incredibly consistent week to week in terms of points production.
I had Tom Brady number 2, just to let you know.
Ouch.
No, you didn't. Go back on the podcast. You said that you would have. You said on the podcast, you said that you would take Russell Wilson number 2 when we were talking about the Drew Brees conversation, and we were talking.
Okay, listen. Okay, I don't think I said that. First of all,
anyway, you love Russell Wilson. He's your top. He's your third quarterback.
Yeah,
the
okay.
ranking versus. Okay, you're right. You had him number 2.
I definitely had him number 3.
Okay, you had him number 3. You love Russell Wilson. You gotta love Doug Baldwin. He is your number 1, and he's been so consistent. I am shocked that you like Stephon Diggs over Doug Baldwin.
Me?
No, Dylan!
You're looking at me, so I was very
waiting
confused.
for you to see if you had anything to say.
I mean, Doug Baldwin's injured right now, so
Who cares? I could not care less about his injury in the preseason. If he's ready for week 1, I do not care at all. Are you worried about Antonio Brown? He's hurt.
He's hurt right now?
Yeah. Is he your number 5 now? Like, who
No.
cares? It's preseason. He'll be ready for week 1.
It's the same thing as like Carson Wentz. He's
Yeah. Like, I don't care.
like if I know he's going to start week 1, that's going to.
I mean, but it's not 100% guaranteed that he's going to start week 1 right now.
I mean, they said he'd be back for week 1, so I'm drafting him as he's going to be back for week 1.
All right, fine.
Like, I'm just surprised.
I mean, if it doesn't affect you, then fine.
But so do you not have Antonio Brown number 1?
No, I have Antonio Brown number 1.
But he was hurt in the preseason.
But there's a lot bigger gap from Antonio Brown to the number 2 wide receiver than there is from Doug Baldwin to...
Not last year there was. There was a big gap between Doug Baldwin and everyone else after that, where he was put. He was a top 5 wide receiver.
He was good.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, what's next? I don't even know.
I don't know.
I think you're at
I
7.
thought you were going to keep talking about it. Let me get mine back up. I was on Dan's quarterbacks outline. I had Keenan Allen at number 8. I don't know. I like Doug Baldwin more than him, and I'm very confident in Doug Baldwin this year.
All right, I have Devontae Adams at number 8. With a healthy Aaron Rodgers, I think he should ball out and have his best season yet with Jordy gone.
Yeah, I also have Devontae Adams at number 8. Jordy gone, like Dan said. He's going to get the lion's share of the targets and should have a solid season for Green Bay.
Yeah, my number 7 is Doug Baldwin. He's my boy. All right, you guys going to talk?
Okay, I have Mike Evans at number 7. Both A.J. Green and Mike Evans had down years last year, so I kind of put them together. I couldn't decide between that 6 and 7 spot. So I think everything will depend on the quarterbacks, but I still expect wide receiver 1 numbers.
Yeah, I have Keenan Allen at my number 7. I like what he does with Phillip Rivers. Only thing is the injury concern. He's had a couple of big injuries in the past, but last season he seemed to be past that. So as long as he can stay healthy, I love Keenan Allen.
Me, number 6 is A.J. Green. I wanted to put him above Michael Thomas. I went back and forth, but for right now I have A.J. Green right below Michael Thomas.
Yeah, I have A.J. Green at number 6. So.
That makes 3 of us. A.J. Green at number 6. Number 5?
It's Michael Thomas.
Yeah, Michael Thomas, he's been consistent the first 2 years, and I expect about the same. I think, like, tier-wise, he's up there definitely with those guys. So, with, like, a Julio, DeAndre Hopkins, Odell. And
You think so?
With how consistent he's been?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I think he's a step below those guys, but I also have Michael Thomas at number 5. That would be the gap in my tiers, but Michael Thomas is my number 1 of the tier 2. If that makes any sense.
It does not. Explain it.
Number 1, he's the best receiver of the tier 2.
The
Wide receivers.
I got you. It's just okay. Number 4, I have OBJ. I think he is the step below everybody else. I guess he's number 1 of tier 2, if that's what we're phrasing.
I see that too with OBJ. I've never been super high on him, but I'm going to go with Julio Jones number 4. His floor was what he did last year, so I still see him as a stud with or without the touchdowns. Don't get me wrong, I love Julio Jones, but like,
why OBJ then? I guess more you making the case for
I don't
OBJ.
know. I don't know. I went back and forth between that and like, I love Julio Jones, and I also think Odell is overrated in terms of his talent wise, but like, I don't know. I'm still going to go OBJ in front of him just because of the touchdown issues last year.
Yeah, same for me. Julio at 4.
Well, I have Julio at 3, and he is in my elite wide receiver 1 category. He will, him or DeAndre Hopkins, I think, will be the number 1 receiver in fantasy.
Yeah, I have OBJ at 3. This team is totally different with him on the field, and I expect him to be there.
Yeah, same with me. OBJ is just such a big part of the Giants' offense. He would have had a huge year last year if he played because that was the Giants' offense. Just throw it to OBJ.
Number 2, my boy, DeAndre Hopkins. I'm really surprised that you guys have DeAndre Hopkins this high because I thought I was going to be the only one that's high on him above Julio Jones, but it seems like you're all in consensus here.
Yeah, I have DeAndre Hopkins at 2. He was the top fantasy receiver last year in terms of numbers. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in that chemistry he had with Deshaun Watson, excuse me.
Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
Deshaun.
Anyway, him and Hopkins obviously connected on a lot of deep balls, so I like that to keep happening, and that's why I have Hopkins at number 2.
Number 1, the man, the myth, the legend, the guy that's hurt in the preseason, Antonio Brown.
Yeah, Antonio.
For sure, Antonio Brown, number 1 in the rankings. But that's all we've got today for our fantasy wide receivers episode. We also have the fantasy running backs and the fantasy quarterbacks up as of this moment, so make sure you go ahead and check both of those out too. In the intro, Jason mentioned a contest for Scooch. If you comment and subscribe to our channel, you will be entered into a contest to win a free Scooch Wingman case. So make sure you do both of those things and enter yourself into that contest. But we will see you very soon with some more fantasy football episodes.